All right, my recording's going. Dave.
Class is off.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, took me a
Glad to
long
be
time.
here.
Took me a long time to find you. Over the last couple of decades, I've tried to locate you every now and then, but there's more than one Dave Chambers around. It's a fairly common name. And fortunately, what did I see you? I saw a posting by you about your LinkedIn page and found your LinkedIn page a few weeks ago, and then finally got a chance to be in touch with you. So over the last couple of decades, whenever I've had an opportunity where John has been talking about or there's been mention of John being the person who wrote the first antivirus, I always have entered, no, Dave Chambers did it. So Dave, if you're reading this, call me, which never happened. So it's August 2nd, 2021. John died in a Spanish prison, I think June 23rd, less than 2 months ago, if I've got that date right. And so there's some things that I wanted to record for posterity, and that's what we're here for.
Yeah, I kind of fell off the antivirus radar roughly maybe 1990. No. Let me see here. That would be about 2007, I think. I've got an antivirus patent, and about when that patent, when I sold that patent to Symantec, I tried to sell it to McAfee, corporate, not the individual. And in the last second, they changed their mind. And so I sold it to Symantec instead. Once that happened, I washed my hands of everything antivirus. Never wanted to return or even reminisce about it.
Right. You didn't mention, I didn't know that you got a patent. How long did it take you to get that? And what is it about?
So while I was at Symantec and Symantec acquired Peter Norton Computing, then transferred my product, which I developed for them, Symantec Anti-Virus for MS-DOS. They transferred it from Cupertino to Los Angeles, where Peter Norton Computing was.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I lost all control. I continued to work for them, and they renamed it from Symantec Anti-Virus for MS-DOS. They renamed it the Norton Antivirus. And so I would continue to suggest new features because those people were clueless. They didn't know anything at all about antiviruses. I was the only one to basically had any competence or history in that area. So I'd tell them we need to do this and they would ignore it. We need to do that and they would ignore it. We need to do this and they would ignore it. So I finally says, look, my great ideas are being wasted on you guys. I quit. So I left Symantec, and any new idea I had thereafter, they could not claim ownership and thus throw away. So okay. I then had an awesome idea. I patented it. It took several years, many years.
What year did you? That's really what I wanted to ask is how long did it take? When did you start the patent process?
I think I did not have proper legal counsel. So I waited something like a year after I left Symantec, so they couldn't claim my ideas were from them. Now, legal counsel probably could have told me better. You could start it immediately as long as Symantec wasn't aware of it or whatever, blah, blah, blah. I waited a long time. What I thought was legally safe to do so.
So what year? What year?
I need to go back to my resume and get those numbers, but it's roughly, I can't remember. It's somewhere after 1990.
Okay.
It's patent. It's
Well,
patent.
at least we've pinned it down to a decade.
Yeah.
And the patent was actually granted after 2000 sometime. Correct?
No, probably. I'll have to go dig up patent 5398196. That's
what you remember your patent number? Let me write that.
I use that for my passwords. Oops, I'm not supposed to say that.
Okay, what's your patent number?
5398196. 5398196. So just Google Dave Chambers 5398196.
Okay, all right.
And it'll be like the third or link or so.
I certainly will. So
all those dates will show up when I started it, and it took like a year and a half, 2.5 years between starting and granting.
Okay.
And of course, classic patents. This is what patents do: is no matter how good it is, they deny it, and you have to then appeal. I guess that eliminates the people that don't have money, because patents are extremely expensive. Cost me many tens of thousands of dollars.
It did. It cost you tens of thousands of dollars.
Tens of thousands of dollars. And I didn't realize this, but patents need annual renewal fees. You know, they say it runs out after what, 17 years, whatever.
Right.
You have to renew it every single year. If you don't, it immediately becomes null and void. So it's thousands of dollars every year. It's like, come on, give it. Well, maybe not thousands, maybe up to 1,000. I can't remember, but it was a lot of money.
All right. Well, I'm going to check into that process. Dave, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how we came to know one another. And perhaps in another video, we can go back earlier and talk about things like how I became a friend of John. I was probably his best friend from 75 until the late 80s. So I came to, when we met, I remember meeting you at a company called Actrix. And let me just put on the screen a resume that covers that time.
I have to apologize, but I honestly do not remember that at all.
What is it that you don't remember?
I don't remember meeting you at Actrix. But then again, I can't remember almost anything these days. My memory is totally shot. My memory of you was at 3333 Bowers.
Really? The Interpath days in 1985?
It was the Interpath days, yeah. But I mean, I can't remember any of my coworkers at Symantec. I can't remember any of my coworkers.
Is that right? Well, do you see my resume on your screen?
Yes.
Okay. So here we are. I came to, in 81, I came to California and worked with John at Four Phase Corporation.
I went to Four Phase as a high schooler, taking a field trip there.
Okay, because that's at the location where Apple then built their headquarters, their old headquarters, not their new spaceship headquarters, Infinity Way or whatever it was. But anyway, that's at Four Phase, and Apple was across the street. And one of the issues there that I had with Apple and really left a bad taste in my mouth is they kept hiring all my programmers because Apple was right across the street. So eventually I probably should have gone to work for them, but I didn't.
I interviewed at Apple, I think, to work on the Macintosh. They wouldn't tell me what it was. They just said it was an office device. And after the interview, they never called me back. So
okay, all right. Well, I never interviewed with them. It never occurred to me to go to work with them because back then they weren't a real computer company. Four Phase was. So then I went to work at Omex. This is in 82 and 83. This was a little company in Santa Clara that was trying to work on optical disc storage. It wasn't disc. They had a little square plate that then they moved the plate around under a reader. And anyway, it went nowhere because Sony or somebody came out with the CDs as the first optical storage. So that huge machine that we were working on went nowhere. So that was 82 to 83. And then it looks like I went to Actrix Corporation, whereas my resume said that I wrote the BIOS for an integrated IBM PC clone. Now I know, Dave, that I had nothing to do with actually writing that BIOS. You were the one doing that, but it was a little bit of resume puffery. As
It's completely natural and normal to pad resumes.
I was hired, I think I was hired to be your boss and to hire more and to hire more people into the department. So I was the interface between you and management, and I was the one that really told management that there was no way they were ever going to be able to write a IBM BIOS, write an IBM compatible computer with a Intel 8186, because the interrupt structure, as I recall, the interrupt structure around interrupt 7 just was different. There's no way we were going to get around it. Do you happen to recall that problem?
Yeah, there are other devices too, like maybe the speaker was at different port addresses, and or the keyboard was different port addresses. Everything was completely designed independently, therefore had completely unrelated, there was no compatibility.
So
and at the time you couldn't virtualize it, so
yeah. And it was you being the diligent young programmer that you were, I think you just didn't step up and say, hey, this is never going to work. And I did, and I was either laid off or fired. I can't really recall. I remember my last day there packing my boxes into my little blue LeBaron, and I injured my back just lifting the boxes over the lip. So that was, one of my main memories of Actrix Corporation. Actrix was owned by Porter Hurt, who was quite the entrepreneur. I think he started out hanging drywall, and then he went into the chip component business. And then from the component business, he went into building computers, Actrix, Access Matrix, and then after that he opened a string of nightclubs, and I lost track of him.
And so, Adam Osborne's with the creator of the personal portable computer at the time. Tell me if you remember this. A vice president at Adam Osborne quit, and Porter Hurt grabbed him and tried to get him to help him with Actrix. I don't remember the guy's name, and then Osborne sued Actrix. You're taking my people, my technology. So there was some kind of bad blood there going on. Osborne computer was really pitiful compared. Actrix was far superior.
Really, the computer?
Well, larger screen.
Well, yes, it was better.
Built in,
and the Osborne was running CP/M as well, as I recall.
And they had like a
little 5-inch
screen or something.
Yeah,
insanely tiny.
Smaller, smaller than a common phone today. Yeah, exactly. That's that with an 80 character, the old standard.
But there was something was going on there that I found kind of interesting, how Silicon Valley likes to steal people from this place to that place.
Okay. And so you have absolutely no memory of me being at Actrix Computer Corporation. That was 83 to 84. But that's when I know that I met you, and I recognized, man, this guy can program. So I took that away from Actrix. And then I moved to, let's see, where was that? That was from 83 to 84, not very long. And then from 84 to 84, I was at Logical Business Machines. And again, John was at Logical Business Machines. So this is John McAfee. This whole video is about John McAfee. And I worked with him at Four Phase, and then at Omex. And then when I got laid off at Actrix, he hired me at Logical Business Machines. and I worked there for some number of months. The president of the company was a gentleman named Howard Cotterman that had his own stories, which might be another interesting video sometime. But if
Very
anybody
long,
wants to
interesting
look up,
video.
if anybody wants to look up Howard Cotterman, he had quite a story, which I happened to have met him at a previous job in the 70s back at NCR, when he was interviewing to be the director of engineering of NCR's financial terminals in Dayton, Ohio. But he turned out he was president of Logical Business Machines. And I don't really remember what the status of Logical was at the time. I believe they also were trying to build an IBM compatible. Is that right, Dave?
That's correct. They came out with their own computer, which I think they would charge an insanely expensive amount, like hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe as high as $500,000, $250,000, something like that. Huge. I think it was 4 users, and I believe it was based on the 8086.
Right.
So
I think that was called the Atom computer, wasn't it?
The Atom computer, and they had a advertisement of, and I don't remember if it was Apple or Logical, but I think no, it was the Coleco Atom sued Logical for the name Atom, and I think they won, didn't they? Yet Atom, yet Logical was first, but because Coleco Atom was more well known, they lost the lawsuit. They didn't properly copyright their computer. Anyway, so when the PC came out with the 8088 based, it was virtually identical to the hardware of this hundreds of thousands of dollar 4-user computer. Now you could buy it for $5,000 IBM PC, equal power, just about. And so basically that eliminated their revenue stream. So then they said, hey, as long as the IBM PC has come out with a 8088, and we're so close already with an 8086, we can come out with our own. We called it the Logical, or they called it the Logical LXT after the IBM PC XT, which had a hard disk. The PC did not have a hard disk, the XT did. So the Logical LXT had a hard disk. And then they made it IBM compatible just because they wanted to compete in that arena.
Right. So I don't know what my job was at Logical at the time. There was some issues. I'm pretty sure it was something to do with land. What were the big land companies back?
Oh yeah. Wow, that goes back.
Yeah, the a lot of local area network companies. There was this one company had its own server, its own protocol. Amazing that I can't remember the name.
IPX SPX was the protocol name. Now, what company uses the SPX protocol? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was. There's a couple of different networking companies, and we were using a server model on their server.
Or net something.
Yeah, darn.
Ethernet hadn't yet established itself as the king, and so Token Ring was still competing.
It did. There were still a lot of little competitors. I remember when I was at Omex, that was that company I worked with in 82 and 83. That's when Ethernet first came out. And so we had an Ethernet controller that was 2 full-size PC cards, and it used the coax cable. That was the original connection, a big orange coax cable that we stretched from one end to the other to the next. And so we were trying to write driver stacks for that thing and incorporate it into our optical storage system.
And you had to terminate the end of the Ethernet. I remember if you didn't have the terminator,
it's so unbelievably primitive. People would not, believe it today. But anyway, that's the situation. So back you don't remember me working at Actrix, and
I was planning on leaving Actrix for about a year and a half. So my mind could have been elsewhere. I actually went to a company called Zbeck, I believe. I interviewed. The vice president says, we will hire you. Can you start on Monday? I gave my resignation at Actrix. And I show up on Monday and they said, who are you? And I says, I'm here for my job. But so-and-so hired me. And they said, oh, so-and-so just quit. And we have no record of you coming on board. So goodbye. And I went back to Actrix and pleaded for my job back. I can't afford to be unemployed. And they gave me my job back.
They did?
Yeah,
well,
and then I continued to look, and that's how I found Logical.
Okay, so Logical, I was just at Logical in 84 and 84, probably just the spring, from the spring through the fall, as I recall. And do you recall, when did you come on board Logical? Because I never remember being there at the same time that you were there. I'm
guessing it was the early fall, so August, September, October timeframe of 84. I interviewed with the manager of software, Peter something. And after the interview, he said, thank you, but no thank you. So I went home, and then I got a call from John McAfee, Peter's boss. John was, I guess, vice president of R&D or engineering, something like that.
Yeah.
So John called me, says, ignore Peter, you're hired. And
yes.
So I'm assuming something somewhere, somebody put a little bug in his ear.
That no doubt would have been me.
Thank you.
Because John and I were still very good friends in 84. This was before he married his third wife, Judy. The third wife that I know of, because he married her up in South Lake Tahoe, El Dorado County in California in the fall of 1984. And I just recently, since you and I last talked, I found the woman that I was dating at the time. And asked her if she remembered going to John's wedding in 1984, because her name and my name are probably the two names on his marriage certificate up in El Dorado County. I haven't been there to try to look for it. But after John got married in 84, our friendship, Judy never really liked me very much. And so it interfered with our friendship, which, you know, happens all the time. But we were still good friends, and I'm the one that told John about you and your programming skills, and I've always said that my contribution to McAfee Anti-Virus is that I found the programmer that could actually do the job. And that was you. So after I left Actrix, let me just bring my my resume back up here again. Share screen. Here it is. Okay, so then let's see. This is where is this? This is Logical Business Machines. Then I worked briefly for this Amber Systems over in Cupertino, and the first product that I ever had that was shrink wrap. They had been working on this J.K. Lasser Your Income Tax for some time, and they just couldn't get it to work. And it was time for the it was tax season, and so I know they turned it over to me to get it to work. And I worked on that for some time in December of 85. That was my employment. And there was some kind of an obscure memory leak in the code that after I discovered that memory leak that worked well enough, shipped it to J.K. Lasser, they shrink wrapped it and shipped it out. So I was the last programmer to touch that code. So I actually could program, I just didn't do that much of it. So then after that, John had left Logical Business Machines, and had formed this company in Interpath Corporation in '85. And so I probably worked with them from like, I don't know, February to June, something of that nature, Interpath. And what we were doing at Interpath, we were working on a voice recognition system. It was pretty much a discrete voice recognition system. And I think our competitors at the time were Ray Kurzweil and Dragon were the other two competitors doing that. And as a consequence, I developed some disregard for Ray Kurzweil, similarly to the way I didn't like what's his name at Apple, because he kept hiring my programmers away from Four-Face. What was Steve Jobs?
Steve Jobs. Oh yeah,
yeah.
I keep looking for his grave. My brother's buried in the same cemetery as Steve Jobs, and I can't find Steve anywhere.
Okay.
It's a secret. Nobody wants to know it because
really,
I guess too many enemies.
Okay. So I worked at Interpath for a few months until John was really just paying me out of his pocket. You know, we had no revenue. John just was paying me a salary, and that couldn't go on very long. And eventually, you know, I was working without expecting to be paid. And so I quit and then went to work for Lockheed Missiles and Space in Sunnyvale. And I believe I probably went to work for them in perhaps August of '85. And after I went to work for Lockheed, I got the employee referral bonus because I referred John to Lockheed. And so that's how come he ended up at Lockheed, is because I say, hey, John, they got jobs, you know. I got the referral bonus. He went to Lockheed, and amazingly, he got a security clearance. I was in a job where I didn't even need to apply for. It wasn't, you know, there was no security clearance required. But John, even with his vast history of drug usage, what he did is he just told the truth about everything. And that was his trick for getting a security clearance. So
Totally honest, I guess.
Yeah, he was just very, very honest about it. Okay, so Dave, can you tell me a little bit about what you did for John at Logical Business and subsequent to that? And I'll stop sharing my resume for now.
All right. So having developed the both the CP/M BIOS and the PC compatible, as much as I could, PC compatible BIOS, I shouldn't say compatible. I should just say Microsoft DOS BIOS.
Okay.
It was not PC compatible for Actrix. Having done that, I went to Logical and they needed me for their LXT BIOS. So I continued to do BIOS related work, clock interrupt, there's what, interrupt 10, I can't remember. Keyboard BIOS, keyboard interface, all kinds of stuff. And then John was looking for differentiation for Logical, so we could be better than the IBM PC. We could have a higher selling points. So he's constantly looking at trying this, trying that, trying this, trying that. One of them was a voice recognition board from a company in LA. I don't remember their name, but it gave the IBM PC the ability to understand speech. And this is what you were referring to earlier. John gave me that board and the manual, and I took it home on a weekend and I wrote the interface from that board to the keyboard driver, which I'd done for Logical. So I showed it to him. This is my memory, subject to flaw. This is what I remember.
Okay.
I showed up on Monday and I showed John, and John loved it because you can now speak and it would enter data from the keyboard interface for applications that had nothing to do with voice input. For example, Lotus 123. He can now talk to and program Lotus 123 using his voice. He loved it so much, he quit Logical and said this was not developed on Logical's dime at Logical facilities. Dave did it at home. And therefore, you don't own it, Logical. I do. And goodbye. And
Well,
so he left Logical.
wait. You did do it for Logical under John's direction at the time, right? Even though
Correct.
you were working at home. So actually,
correct. This goes back to puffery and embellishment.
I see.
And I actually did develop it using Logical equipment, which I had taken home because I did not. My PC was CPM at the time. I needed a Logical MS-DOS box to do the work on. So John went back to Logical and said, I will give you exclusive rights to build the hardware, because this was a hardware thing. It was a IS, whatever, the PCI slot, whatever. Plug into your PC, ISA bus, I guess, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
You plug this, so Logical got the money for building the hardware. John got the money for whatever else revenue comes in as a result of that. So it was a win-win situation. So I guess John did argue, yes, Dave did develop it using your hardware, but you get the sale of the hardware. So we both win.
Okay. I remember when I went to work with John at Interpath, it was less than a half length board. It was a small board, 8-bit bus, and it seemed to me it could cache up, or maybe it was, the software, it could have like 200 words in it or something of that nature, and it would run down the list trying to recognize.
Correct.
It was a discrete word recognition software. And I remember John and we would go to trade shows with that. And I never knew that you were the one. At the time, I did not know that you were the one who wrote the software for that.
Yeah, this was all back of the room handshake agreement. Nothing is in writing. Apparently John was paying me, again, like you, out of his own pocket or through sales or whatever, and nothing was written down. Nothing was, he just paid me. He was like, hey, this is cool. I didn't know about, legality of software ownership, whatever. But yeah, it was a discrete word, and you have to train. Remember, you had to train each word 10 times. Apple, 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 apple. You have to train it over and over and over, every word. But once it was trained on all 200 whatever words, it would give you, I think it's this word or this word. Now here's John's genius. He said, Dave, train every word twice. And both the first guess and the second guess have to be the same word that has been trained twice. And the accuracy just shot through the roof. You could talk to it with your nose plugged, and it would still recognize the words accurately. It was amazing.
I remember, I thought that what we did is when we took it on trade shows, he would have the script showing how it would work. And even though it would recognize a couple hundred words, do you happen to remember what
it was over 100, less than 1,000.
Yeah, something like that.
Way less than
what he would do is after each word, he would reload the cache with the next word. And his script would go so that there was really only one choice. The next action was really only one choice, because he'd say a word like start, and then he would load the Lotus, whatever was the next word, and that way he could speak the second word Lotus in any kind of weird voice, and it would load, because that was actually the only choice.
Yeah, he would. I remember that. That was another one of his geniuses, was make one of the words load a new set of vocabulary.
Oh yeah, okay, right. So that's what
if the vocabulary is one word or two words, it's going to be 100% accurate every time.
Absolutely, it was really quite impressive. So in his show, and of course, John did a terrific, presentation at a trade show. So, but we never sold any of those. We may have sold a few, but there was no actual revenue with that. And so then he tried to turn Interpath into some other things. I remember after I went to Lockheed, he worked on having some kind of system where he could do a video. Now, this is before people today just don't understand how primitive life was.
Yeah, we didn't have color video. We had ASCII characters.
But just to do something like have a screenshot where you had the screen and you could record the mouse moving around on the screen and clicking on things. That was a complex operation. And so what John did with the board, and I guess developed somewhat with the software that you had for that, is he developed a system that somebody could write some training or presentation software where they could show the actual screen interaction. So that was another product. So all right then. So how long did you work at Logical?
So I worked for Logical, I'm guessing roughly 84 to 87.
Wow. That was a long time.
Yeah. And Logical, let me think here. I was with Logical. They left their facility on, what is that? Ironwood, Lockwood. What was this name of the street there? Anyway, they left that building. They had to move to someplace else in Sunnyvale near Central Expressway and Wolf Road.
Okay.
And Howard Cotterman, also similar to John paying you out of his pocket, Howard Cotterman paid me out of his pocket to do some kind of, I don't remember what it was, land-based, some kind of a land-based product.
Because of his real estate ventures with his wife?
I don't remember. I'd go to his house and I'd program on his computer at his house, and he'd pay me hourly or something like that. And that never went anywhere, as most ventures don't go anyplace.
I see.
Yeah, and so I left so Logical got out of the hardware business completely and became 100% software. This database manager that they developed way back on their $100,000+ computer, now that they'd ported that to the IBM PC, and they were selling applications that would run on top of this database. And it was a horrible database. They named it Diplomat. Because it was like English-like language. You didn't need to, it's not like SQL where you got to learn SQL coding. This one, anybody, kind of like what Symantec did with their Q&A product, where they said you could program in English. These people claim to be able to program in English. So they were 100% software only, and this database would just, if you launch the database and lose power to the PC, the database itself would become corrupt. You don't have to add values. Just the fact of launching it and crashing would virtually kill it, and it would be unusable again. So they had this recovery business where you pay them and they would recover your data.
Sweet.
Sounds kind of profitable.
Right. Now, do you remember Bob Nagy from Logical?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you do remember Bob?
Yes.
Oh,
I do
okay.
remember
Because
Bob.
he was the last programmer. Logical was ultimately bought by an individual, and Bob was the sole employee. And he moved to Brazil and worked on it remotely from Brazil for another 20 years.
Oh, wow.
And I think he lives in Cleveland now.
I remember he got caught up in this movement of
Life Springs.
Your mind controls reality. And he wore glasses at the time.
That's right. That's right.
He says, I only need glasses because my mind tells me I need glasses. So he'd take the glasses off and he'd tell himself, I don't need glasses. I don't need glasses. I don't need glasses. And he was trying to convince us that, yeah, you could do anything. Your mind
Yeah.
controls reality. And it's like,
I remember I did a lot of human growth and development stuff back then, like Life Springs, and I didn't do Warner Earhart's Est, but there was Summit and Life Springs and a couple of others, Sterling. But yes, I introduced Bob to Life Springs, and John was concerned because he goes, well, you know, is he going to come back crazy?
Yeah, I had a very addictive personality back then too. I could have, had you told that to me, I totally
yeah. Well, Bob has always, and reason we stayed in contact is because I found it to be a very, very useful program, and Bob found it useful in his life. And in fact, some people that we referred to the program, they kind of nutted up. So, but anyway, life, and it's now out of business. The Warner Earhart's Est evolved into Landmark Education Forum. It's not nearly as intense as it used to be, but it's still going. And if anybody's listening to this, I highly recommend their program. Anyway, back to antivirus.
So having left Logical, why did I leave? I think I was just getting disappointed that the company was getting smaller and smaller. And I just jumped ship. I joined a company called ITT Information Systems, International Telephone and Telegraph.
Really?
ITT used to compete with AT&T. So ITT had their own IBM PC compatible. And again, they wanted ROM BIOS compatibility. And I joined for that reason, to work on their PC compatibility. IBM had just come out with this thing called OS2, so they could cut ties with Microsoft. They could be in charge of their own operating system,
Right.
and Bill Gates couldn't control them. So ITT was needing ROM BIOS compatibility for their OS2 system. So I was doing that. And bulletin boards, which are kind of like the early days before the internet. People would have computers running off of telephone wires into their house. And I'd run around, poking around on boards here and there. And I ran across one run by John McAfee. And it's like, hey, I know a John McAfee. So I sent him an email. I says, hey, John, this is David. Are you the John McAfee I used to work with? This was me. I hadn't seen him now for a couple of years.
Let's back up just a little bit. So I was laid off in '84, went to work for Lockheed in '85. Shortly after that, John went to work for Lockheed. So that would have been late '85 or early '86. And you're saying that you continued at Logical for another 2 years until '87.
I think '87.
Right.
Yeah, long after John left, I continued.
Long after John left, you were still at Logical, and so
Howard
then you
was my boss.
You discovered a John running his bulletin board systems, which we'll come back to.
So now I'm working at ITT. I find John's bulletin board. I can't remember what he called it. Rabbit something, or rabbit card board. I don't know. So I asked John, how are you doing? He says, I'm doing great. And he says, did you hear that the Macintosh, I think this was the anniversary of the Macintosh's introduction. So it was what, introduced in '84, because they had that big 1984 promo thing.
Oh yeah.
So this must have been '85, I'm guessing. Anniversary of their introduction. On 1 year later, a virus hit that infected the Macintoshes. And the only thing it would do would say, happy birthday, Macintosh. Unsolicited message box would pop up. Happy birthday, Macintosh. That again, I've searched the internet for this for corroboration, and I can't find it. So my brain could be making stuff up, but that's what I remember. So John says, hey, did you hear about this Macintosh antivirus? He says, how hard would it be to make an antivirus for the PC? And
wait, there was a Macintosh antivirus? Because you described the virus.
He described a virus.
Okay.
He said, I want to build an antivirus for the PC so the same thing doesn't happen for PCs. He says, can you make me an antivirus? And I said, give me a weekend.
Right.
just as I did with the voice recognition board. I think it was called Voice Command. Just as I'd done with Voice Command, give me a weekend. So I said, give me a weekend. And Monday, I showed him this thing called C4. No, it didn't have a name at the time. John came up with the name C4 later. And of course, at that point, viruses were so rare, they didn't exist as far as I could conceive of. So I actually had to write a virus to test my antivirus. So I wrote the antivirus, then I wrote the virus to test it, and showed it to John. And then I did get this in writing. I don't know where the paperwork is now, but John and I agreed 50-50 revenue split on this product to be marketed under the name Interpath.
Okay. And
John came up.
This was about 87.
So this, I believe, was October, November 87.
Okay.
No, this could be 86, I think.
86.
Which doesn't jive with the 1984 to 86.
Okay.
But this my brain cells are defective.
Okay.
So, but anyway, yeah, I believe it was 86 because I started the Norton antivirus named Semantic Antivirus, I believe, in 87. So this must have been 86.
Okay.
John told me that xylene, XY something, 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 xylene kills viruses. So he goes, I'm going to call this cybernetic xylene, C for cybernetic, and it's cybernetic xylene 4 or C4 for short. So that's how he named this product, C4.
Okay.
And he and I would just share the profits 50-50.
Okay, let's leave it at this point. Let's go back and fill in for the viewers some of the history of the time. Now, this issue about having IBM compatible computers, of course, they're all compatible and has very little to do with IBM. But back then, when IBM, which was 1981, the year I moved to California from Dayton, Ohio, when I was at NCR, IBM came out with this computer, and the version with the 10 megabyte hard drive
that was later.
It came, and that was a little bit later, but soon. But it was like it was like $5,000.
It was a lot.
Yeah, $5,000 to have an 8088 computer with a 10 megabyte hard drive. But that was so much better than having these used 5.5-inch floppies, which was an innovation, but because before that, the TRS-80 was using 8-inch floppies. So the 5 1/4 or whatever they were was a big innovation. But when IBM released that, they still had the idea of like mainframe documentation. So they had really expensive documentation and loose leaf binders. And in the back of their technical manual was the complete source code
exactly
for their BIOS.
For the ROM BIOS.
The ROM BIOS was written in the technical manual that came with every computer. Well,
the family jewels are there.
It was unbelievable. And so the issue was how could you, it was there, you could just copy it, but then IBM would sue you. And as I recall, Eagle Computer was the first one that came out with an MS-DOS computer that was very similar to the IBM PC. And as soon as it went public, the guy who owned it, the day it went public, he took his money, went out and bought a Ferrari and killed himself on that very day. That was one of the sad stories of those times. But then about the time that we were doing this in 84, I'm sure when we were working on this at Actrix, there was a company called Phoenix. Now, Phoenix was a company that had been writing C compilers. It was the Lattice C compiler, and they had a link editor. And what they did is they had somebody, they had a programmer that had never seen the IBM code, and then they had a group. they had a group of people that would study the IBM code in the back of the manual and on the machine itself, and they would write explicit requirements and tell the programmer every interface call and every
This
possible
input
return for
has
it.
to have this output. Yes,
Right.
exactly.
So there was this firewall between the
Disconnect.
programmer and the person reading the code, and so it clearly was not copied code. And thereafter, if you wanted to buy a IBM compatible BIOS, you could just buy the chip from Phoenix, or what are the current ones? There's
AMI.
AMI. There's a couple of
something.
there's a couple of chip suppliers that sell these things, but this was in about 1984. That's when that happened. Now, another thing that's related to this antivirus is that in 81, 82, 83, AIDS started, was very much in the news.
Who?
AIDS, HIV.
Oh, HIV/AIDS, yes, correct.
Right. So it was killing a lot of people and in the news.
They had no idea what was causing it. So
They had no idea what it was causing. And
one of the, it was drugs, some kind of whatever.
I remember a group, I thought it was, they said, well, Crisco, if you used enough Crisco, you couldn't get it. So anyway, John's idea was that he would sell a AIDS-free ID. So if you were hanging out at the Fern bars trying to pick people up, you could pull out your ID and see that you had been tested to be AIDS negative.
Classic entrepreneurial John. I mean, John, he was a genius.
John. So that's John. And so I remember I was one of his people. We went out on his sailboat one time, and I was holding up the card. We were trying to make a commercial about his promoting his AIDS-free card. And what you could do if you met somebody that had this AIDS-free card, you could take their number and then call or probably just call. But anyway, he linked into his bulletin board system. So he would record all the numbers so that you could verify the card was not counterfeit, and that the person had been tested within a certain amount of time. And so this was circa 84, 83, before he got married. And so John was very much into the whole idea, the terminology of viruses. He created some kind of virus association such that he could claim in his advertising that this virus group has given him the stamp of approval, but it's a virus group that he himself created.
This was a computer virus?
No, this was HIV.
Oh, HIV.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and so that's
pre-computer. Got it.
It was pre-computer virus stuff, but he used,
because he did the same thing with the computer. We'll get into that later.
That's right, because in 82, 83 he was doing this, so he was very into the virus terminology, and he had this bulletin board system which he put together to support his anti-AIDS virus-free ID card. And because of his involvement with the biological viruses, that gave him a good background for doing similar things with the computer virus. Dave, let me turn it back over to you. John has asked you to write it. You whipped it out over a weekend, and you had an actual written agreement.
Had an actual written agreement. I've searched my house top to bottom looking for it. I can't find it. I'd love to put it up on my LinkedIn picture somewhere, just saying, hey, now using embellishment and puffery, I'd like to say that I was 50-50 owner of McAfee. What did he call his name himself? McAfee Associates. Yeah, after Interpath, he renamed his company McAfee Associates. But before that happened, so I explained to him, I wrote him this antivirus, and then I wrote him this virus And he had, again, Genius John, I should call him that, Genius John, said, hey, I'm going to run this virus on existing PC antiviruses to see how well they do. And they did not catch it. And John says,
were there existing PC antivirus programs?
There were some very small players. Dr. Solomon, I believe, was one of them. And there were some other little players. Dr. Solomon, I believe, is in the UK. So there were some outside the United States developers, maybe one or two inside the United States developers, very low visibility. But John goes, hey, you know what? I am going to test these other people. I think going back to what we just mentioned about the biological viruses, he's going to test these other companies. He's going to create another company that will then test these other companies' antiviruses and show them that they are all unable to detect all the viruses that he's been able to collect. And his does check all the boxes, detected, 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 detected. Now, he only had a virus library of one, that one that I'd written for C4, but he renamed it Virus B, implying that there was a virus A in his library somewhere, and maybe some other viruses, C, D, E, F, G. We didn't have names back then for the viruses, so he just named them virus. He named mine Virus B, which never existed in the wild, but was designed for testing purposes only. And so he created this other company. I can't remember the name of the company, or maybe it was not so much the company, but the product. But it would test competitors' antiviruses, and then he'd do these little write-ups. This one doesn't work, that one doesn't work, but mine does. Checkbox, 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 whatever.
And so this is probably some apparently independent testing organization.
Correct.
That he just used for
testing
marketing.
organization.
But he created the organization, sure.
And he had an RV that I think he turned into a virus testing lab, computer virus testing lab, and claimed that he can like go to your site and test your local area network for viruses or what, I don't know.
Do you recall, do you know if he ever actually did that?
I never saw him do that. He might have claimed it.
Claimed it, yeah, it's a good marketing.
But that's marketing. Marketing can see it, say anything.
Let me back up and lay a little bit more historical groundwork. Now, back in the 80s, when I moved to California in 81, I was amazed that you would go to what are normally like art fairs and, you know, festivals, and they would have, and computer swaps. The way you got software is you would go to one of these festivals, and people would, there would be dealers that would lay out all their software on floppy disks, so they'd have like a bunch of editors or you know, game software, and you really had no idea what this stuff was, but it was cheap. But that is the way, that was the vector, that was at least a claimed vector for viruses, is that you would go to these fairs, and you would actually buy the media and take it home, your floppy disk, and load it into your PC or your CPM machine. And of course, that's, you know, nobody today could believe that, because you know, the people today can hardly even remember back when you bought software at a shrink wrap at Best Buy, which maybe you can still do. But anyway, back then, that's it. You know, that was a cheap place to get it. You probably could have bought it some software at shelves. They had things called computer stores where you know, young entrepreneurs would set up a single person computer store, similar to perhaps a phone repair store today, closest analogy, except that they had more stuff. I know back in 81, I spent $3,000 for an NEC spin writer, a daisy wheel spin writer, so I could get better printing than the dot matrix. And that was like a year before Apple introduced the laser printer. So that was $3,000 for a spin writer terminal that was completely worthless. Okay. All right. So that's how viruses got transmitted, is people sharing floppy disks back in the day. Dave, continue, please.
I can't remember where I left off. So I did this antivirus for John. He came out with this alternative side business of testing competitors' antiviruses.
The RBE.
I created another antivirus for him.
Now, who were you working for at that point? You were still at Logical, correct?
So no, I had quit Logical and I was working for the for IT&T, ITT.
Okay.
I keep calling them IT&T. It's not. It's ITT.
Okay.
They were bought by Alcatel and they renamed themselves Alcatel Information Systems. I remember making their OS2 show the Alcatel orange triangle logo when you boot up OS2. It was nice and pretty. But anyway, I was working for ITT, Alcatel Information Systems. Contacted John, wrote him the antivirus, wrote him the first antivirus, C4, wrote him the second antivirus. I called it JFinder. He gave me an actual virus that I didn't write myself. He says, Dave, we found this in the wild. It's called the Jerusalem virus. Write me an antivirus specifically for this guy. And I used this concept of a signature detection algorithm. So you disassemble the virus, you look and find out what does the codes look like. You put that code inside your search engine. Now you can scan for it. And then John said, so I called this JFinder. JFinder.exe was the name of the program. John gave me another virus and I added it to JFinder.
Dave, what did you write this in? Were you?
This is all assembly language.
You were doing assembler at the time.
Assembly language, yes.
That's what you were doing the BIOS in, and that's what I was.
Yeah, the BIOS is assembly, x86 assembly language.
Right.
I'd learned C at Actrix, but I never used it for any antivirus.
Okay. So this is all assembler.
Is all assembler. So JFinder, I modified JFinder to do this one or two other virus signatures. I think the Michelangelo virus and maybe something else. So I couldn't call it JFinder anymore. I called it VFinder for Virus Finder. So I'd written out John 3 antiviruses, C4, JFinder, VFinder. Then I written them a couple of ones that are, there was this one, the Pakistani brain. I don't remember if it was that or what, but it would infect your boot sector of your floppy that we were just discussing about getting purchased at these fairs. You get a boot sector virus. And so I made a fourth antivirus for John that would check the boot sector of your floppy and verify that it was accurate. It was an actual MS-DOS boot sector, not a Pakistani brain or whatever. So it was kind of like a virus. It wasn't a virus signature. It was an accuracy signature. You're supposed to look like the signature. If you're not, you might be a virus. Okay. So that way you can detect any virus without having updating your signature database. So you're only looking for truth. You're not looking for false. Right. So I wrote that one for MS-DOS version 1.0. I wrote another one for 2.0. I wrote another one for 3.0. Did DOS? I think for 3.0. MS-DOS 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. I was getting tired. It's like, hey, come on now. So I called them 3 independent antiviruses. So now I'm up to about 5 or 6 antiviruses, which I've written for John. Just a ton of them. And John would periodically say, Dave, come in and I'll give you a check for last week's sales. So I would show up at his house over there on Cheney, an Agnew Village.
Yes. Santa
Clara, pretty close to right now where the 49er Stadium is.
Is that amusement park still there? That Great America Amusement Park?
Very close to Great America Amusement Park. The building the home that he owned or lived in at the time survived the 1902 earthquake of San Francisco. That's how old the building was. But it's not there today.
Okay.
The fire department, the current owner after John left, the current owner said to the fire department, hey, you want to practice putting out a fire? You can light my house on fire, burn it down, because I'm going to build this nice new one in its place. So that his home is now gone. So people talk about going to see the garage where Steve Jobs started Apple. Well, the garage where McAfee started is gone. It's burned up.
As he was always renting that place. I don't know if he eventually bought it, but
I don't know if he bought it or rented, but whatever, it's gone now, and it's been replaced by a modern building.
Yes. So you went there.
So I went there,
pick up your money.
Gave him my I didn't give him anything. He'd give me a check. I'd look at the check, it's like $200, and I looked at his driveway. He didn't have a garage, so
right.
That house didn't have a garage. So I look at his driveway, and there's like a matching to, I don't know what it was, 300ZX cherry red sports cars.
They were Mustangs
with 2 matching license plates. Again, I'm embellishing, but his and hers, Judy and his, whatever. And I looked at the $200. I look at the sports car. I look at the $200. I look at the sports car. It's like, wait a minute. If this is 50%, how can he afford that? So I basically says, John, I'm out of here. I am not going to work for you anymore. I want you to buy me out. Buy my 50% from our negotiated contract. And I think he paid me $7,000. I was just buying a house. It was a condominium, $77,000 condominium in San Jose, and I needed 10% down. I had $700. I had to come up with another $7,000. So John wrote this check for $7,000 to keep my 50% of this revenue that we negotiated. I got the down payment on my house, so I'm super pumped, but he gets to keep 100% of the profits of his sales. So I quit working for John, and at that time, ITT was moving to Phoenix. They told me to move or get laid off. And so I said, so I started interviewing. I interviewed with Symantec. Dennis Coleman, one of the founders of Symantec, Dennis Coleman, Gordon Eubanks, and 1 or 2 other people. I interviewed with Dennis Coleman. He hired me to do some video something drivers for their Q&A product, I believe. And about a year went by, and they said they were developing this product called the Symantec Anti-Virus for Macintosh, SAM.
And do you recall the year?
I'm guessing 87.
Okay.
Because
so this was just a few months after you wrote the first antivirus for John.
So I must have wrote C4 for John in 86, maybe early 87. This was roughly October, November of 87, when Symantec says, we want a PC product called Symantec Antivirus for MS-DOS, SAM, to round out our Symantec Antivirus for Macintosh, SAM product. And I says, hey, I'm your man. I know how to write antiviruses. So I wrote them an antivirus, got everything, this time even more so, got lawyers to look at the contract. Everything is nice and worded. And they said, write us this antivirus. So I started writing their Symantec Antivirus for MS-DOS. Told John, hey, I'm competing with you now. Periodically, I'd take over a demo copy and show him what I was working on. And of course, I would slow it down so that he would not be, no feeling of threatened compatibility. He'd look at it, he'd say, Dave, that's way too slow. You got to speed this thing up. It's like, well, I slowed it down because I'm not going to show you my real product.
Okay, all right, that's good. That's
yeah,
good.
so he
was still over in the little house on Cheney?
He was still on Cheney. His corporation, actually, I think his corporation now was somewhere on Mission College Boulevard, same side of 101 as his house, but a few blocks away from his house. It was an actual corporation.
There's like 2 business towers there that his company eventually moved in. So it was not
before that.
Before that, okay.
It was way before that.
Okay.
But it was close to those towers, maybe half a mile away, 1 mile away from those towers. So I developed Symantec Antivirus for MS-DOS, and then the Norton acquisition happened. they renamed it the Norton antivirus. I actually considered going to Norton before Symantec. After leaving John, I needed to find a buyer of my software, and Norton told me that we don't believe viruses exist. We think it's all marketing for antivirus developers to sell their products. We refuse to ever come out with an antivirus. They told me right to my face, we don't believe viruses exist. And so when Symantec bought them and said, we're going to rename it the Norton Antivirus, they blew up. They exploded. No, viruses are fake. It's all fake news. And Symantec says, you guys don't know what you're talking about. You will do this. We own you. You'll do what we tell you. And so they did everything in their power to kill this product.
Norton did everything in their power to kill the product.
Did everything in their power to kill Symantec's Norton Antivirus. They would refuse to certify the product. We have alpha testers before we go beta, and then sell to the customers before first customer ship. You'd have alpha testers and beta testers. They kept saying, oh, it doesn't work here. It doesn't work there. It doesn't work here. It doesn't work there. They did everything in their power to claim that this product was not ready for prime time. And then finally, Gordon Eubanks says, you either ship the product or you're all fired, to the Norton people.
Okay.
And within like a month, it was on the store shelves. So Norton Antivirus 1.0. Now, I think this was 89 or 90, 1989, 1990, somewhere around there was when the first Norton 1.0 product hit the shelves.
Now, which of those versions did you write?
So I wrote 1.0 and 1.5, and then the Norton people took over my source code and gave it a Norton look and feel. And Norton did not go to art school, and they believe that you should have, like, every third letter should be a different color than the letter before it, and the interface was horribly ugly. Green background with red text and bold and underlined and blinking and half bright. Oh, it was horrible. I spent a lot of time on the Symantec antivirus for MS-DOS, getting the user interface to look exactly identical, branded to the Q&A product that Symantec had come out with. It had virtually identical user interface, even though I completely wrote it from scratch. I didn't use any of their code because I could do it better than they did anyway. So it was beautiful, and it was basically black and white, gray and blue. That's it. You don't need any more colors than that. That's IBM came out with this big document that says, you know, limit your colors. And I believed it. I read it. I believed it. So product version Norton Antivirus 2.0 was my underlying code with their user interface, and it was horrible. It was just terrible. But it still did my engine, my identification engine. And they were refusing. I'd figured out how to speed up scanning memory to under like 2 seconds, which was way faster than anybody else. Again, remember, we're running on PCs with a clock speed of about less
4
than
megahertz.
It was between 4 and 10 megahertz. The PC was a 4.77 megahertz, and the other computers, in order to be better than IBM, would go a little bit faster, 5, 6, 8. I think 10 was the fastest logical LXT that I ever saw. But it would take minutes to scan memory, to scan 1 megabyte of memory. And I figured out how to do it using a single-step interrupt vector. You could actually single-step down. Anyway, you can scan super fast. And I give it to the Symantec engineers in Los Angeles. I refused to go to LA. I stayed in Cupertino. So everything was remote. Everything was email, telephone calls. And
email. I guess they had email in 90.
They might have had email. It was probably some proprietary system.
Right.
But they would just ignore me. They would refuse to implement any cool new thing that I would invent. And so I says, you know what, screw you guys. I'm leaving. I'm going to write my own new antivirus. So I've written 5, 6 for John. I'd written 1 or 2. Norton Antivirus Junior. There was this little tiny, super duper, using this kind of, like you mentioned, linkage editors, where you can have overlays. I did something similar to that with the antivirus. So the antivirus, when you only got 1 megabyte of RAM and half of it is used for your video display, you don't got a lot of room left. Now your antivirus has to sit in that valuable half a megabyte left over. I figured out how to like live out on the swap drive somewhere. So I'd take like a little tiny 500 bytes of code. The entire antivirus that finds 6,000 antivirus signatures only takes 500 bytes of code. And that was Norton Antivirus Junior.
I see.
So anyway, Peter Norton ignored my ideas. I left there in order to do yet another antivirus. Now I figured out how to do virus signatures without signatures, kind of a thing.
You left there to do another antivirus?
To do my own antivirus, yes.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't for another company.
Not for another company, but okay. I would allow them to be a buyer. That's why I would patent it. 5398196 patent would then be presented to you. I went to Central Point up in, I believe it's Washington. Says, hey, I got this patent. I will be happy to license it to you. And you could use the technology to add to your value. Your existing antivirus product, Central Point Antivirus, can now use my technology if you license it from me. And they says, no, thank you. We're just going to steal it. And I said, you can't, it's patented. And they said, our lawyers are more expensive than your lawyers. Sue us. And it's like, I spent like, I think it was $25,000 on that patent. And 1, 2, 3 years worth of back and forth with the patent office trying to get them to grant it.
Well, I want to ask you about your compensation with Symantec, but before we do that, I want another little bit of history. Is I remember really the end of my friendship with John. The last thing we did together as just friends is he came over one day with one of his matching Mustangs, and we cruised up and down the El Camino. And he was, because John had arrived. I was still, grinding away there. I was still grinding away as an engineer at Lockheed. And he had, after all the years we had known one another, he had come into his fortune. And so between the fact that he was now rich and I was not, and his wife really didn't like me that much, in part because I remembered all of John's earlier girlfriends, and her name was Judy, and I kept calling her Julie or Jenny or some previous girlfriend's name. It was really difficult for me. I was always calling her some other girl's name. But anyway, that was that ride up and down El Camino. Really, while John and I remained friends. But he was rich and I was not. So that was pretty much the end of that. Okay, so going back to, and again, I don't remember what year that was, but 87 sounds about right. Oh, also, as you noted earlier, your first antivirus came out as Interpath C4.
Correct.
Interpath, right. So what had happened is when John formed Interpath, and I was working with him for not much pay, he was giving me stock, and also he would give other people stock, like the fellow that came up with his logos, like just the symbol that would represent Interpath on letterheads and any kind of app. Right. It was, what do they call it? The corporate branding strategy. And then lawyers, he would pass out stock to them. And then when his antivirus became very successful, he renamed it as sole proprietorship McAfee Associates, and tried to claim that everybody that worked in Interpath had no interest in what ultimately became the antivirus. And a group of shareholders got together and sued him, and I was the third biggest shareholder after John. And so I was a key figure in that lawsuit because it made it worthwhile for for the lawyers to sue, because they had my share.
And he kept the logo, right? I mean, right there, wasn't the logo identical?
I don't really recall if Interpath was the same as the McAfee logo. You know, this all came out in the litigation, but certainly, you know, John came to see me, and he wanted me to come on his side, and then you know, he pulled some shenanigans, but basically, hey, I had to sue my best friend. So that was another thing that
don't sell a used car to a friend, and don't hire a friend.
That was pretty much the end of that. Too bad. I love John, but you know, he's a crazy man. Okay, all right. So compensation from Symantec.
Okay, so Symantec, I tried to get legal counsel again. Hindsight is 2020, right? Looking
Always.
back, I see how many mistakes I made. And so I thought I was getting legal counsel. I look back, and my legal counsel was crap. So Symantec says, we'll give you 10% of sales. I don't know if that's net or whatever, 10% from sales of the antivirus, but they won't begin until we start shipping. Now, I didn't know that Peter Norton Computing would prevent those sales for 9 months, 6 months, however long it was, for a long time. But I couldn't live without a paycheck. They says, you're a full-time employee. You need to stop receiving W-2 income and work for free, and then get this 10% royalty, or we'll just buy it out from you right now, and you won't own the product. You keep the product and you lose your salary, or you get royalty, blah, blah, whatever. So I couldn't afford to live without an income. I should have just lived off of Visa cards and borrowed money, but hindsight is 2020, and it's too late. Water under the bridge. So I told him, okay, I'll accept, I think I said 2 years salary, something like that, up front. I'll sell this to you for 2 years of my current salary, and a raise. So they says, done. Sign the document. I got that document somewhere too, who knows where it is now. 2 years salary and 2 bonus. So I get an increase in salary of maybe 20% raise. I get 2 years of salary contingent on sales reaching $1 million. If we don't hit the million, I don't get that 2-year salary bonus, or 2-year equivalent bonus.
And you remained an employee.
I remained an employee working for them on the product that they now own.
Okay.
So Symantec Antivirus for MS-DOS, they now have the source code. They own it. I just, as an employee, continued as the sole developer of it. So I did that. And I was able to do their development until Norton finally said, okay, we're going to ship this product, now that they were threatened with being fired if they don't ship the product. So they shipped the product. We now had 1 year of sales under their belt, and they did make the 1 million. As a matter of fact, their sales was $40 million, outselling every other Symantec product, outselling first year of any Symantec product, any Norton product. This was the best product both companies had ever seen in their life. So had I gotten the 10%, that would have been 4 million the first year. If I had just lived off of loans, I could have made it. And I've gotten 4 million as my 10% royalty, but no, too late. I was stupid. I accepted the 2-year salary up front. Idiot.
Okay.
Idiot.
Hey, all right. Yeah, we've all got those. But hey, but you're still married to the same woman that you were married to when I first met you in '83, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
40 years and counting. Plus.
Yeah. No divorces, no child support.
Yeah. No, I was kidding.
Oh, your kids are grown. You're good.
Yeah, my kids went to John's house for a barbecue. He invited us over once, maybe twice. So my kids have all met John, or at least the ones that were born at the time. I'm not quite sure.
Right, right. My kids one summer, probably 84, they were here. So they met John then, and they met John but later because he lived in Colorado and they lived in Denver. I don't know if they ever got up to his.
I was gonna go see him in Colorado. There by
his meditation
somewhere.
Yeah, right.
The west side of Pikes Peak or something. I don't.
Yeah, I never got there either, and then things went to hell. Of course, by that time, John and I were no longer friends, so I wasn't sure that I would be welcome. But my kids and people associated with me, there was no ill will with them. So okay, so for $40 million their first year, and you did not get a cut of that.
Year. Yeah, refused to do any new feature for like 6, 7, 9 months, and then I said, "Forget you guys. This industry is moving too quickly for you. You are idiots. You're all fools. I'm going to compete against you." So then I did the antivirus patent of a new concept, antivirus, and I am not a businessman, and I don't know what I am doing. I can't find a buyer. Centerpoint said no. A couple other companies said no. I hired some friends, some coworkers of mine that worked in marketing. I says, "Hey, you got to help me. How do I market this thing?" And I couldn't find any traction at all. And finally I said, "You know what?" And now I'm paying these maintenance fees. I finally found some guy. I said, "Hey, I'll split this 50-50 with you if you can find me some buyers." He couldn't. Then I said, "I'm out of here. These maintenance fees are killing me. I've got no income yet. It's costing me thousands and thousands to maintain." He says, "Hey, let's bring on board another guy, and you pay him 50% of your share." So now I'm down to 25%. Another guy's got 50%, and this other guy's got 25%. So 100% of this, of zero. That's what I figured. This is cheap. It's only, I get to keep 25% of zero. This guy keeps 50% of zero. He keeps 25% of zero. Anyway, so I said, "I'm out of here. Find me a buyer. I'm going to sell outright. I'll sell this patent." So they found McAfee. McAfee says, "Okay," I think he said $100,000. So I'll keep, yeah, I think it was $100,000. So I'll keep 25,000, the other guy 25,000, the other guy 50,000 of this 100,000 sale. At the last second, the McAfee lawyer said, "We think we found prior art. We don't think this patent is valid. Sale canceled. We're not going to buy it." So then these two guys went to Symantec and said, "Do you guys want to buy this patent?" And Symantec said, "Yes, we'll buy it for $50,000. That means I get to keep 12,500. This patent cost me 25,000. I'm already 25,000 in the hole. So at least I recover half of my profits in this investment." So Symantec says, "Yes, done, deal done." And they signed the paper. They gave me the check. I got to keep 12,500. The other guy 12,500. The other guy 25,000. So these two marketing guys, they're happy. They did virtually no work except to just dig up the sales.
Right.
I got 50% of my investment back of this patent, 25,000 of lawyer fees. I get half of it back. So I'm still negative. So then I said, I wash my hands of all thing antivirus. I am never going to talk antivirus again. And then I went off into machine control or protocol or something.
Oh, okay. Now, do you recall what year it was that you sold the your patent back to Symantec?
I'm guessing 1992, 93. I believe it was well before 95, but it could be as late as 95.
Okay.
Something like that, 90s, somewhere around there, mid 90s.
Now, do you remember who took over, like at McAfee? They, even before, who took over the development for the McAfee product after you washed your hands of it?
So when I was working with John also hired a guy, David Yelly. He came out with an antivirus product called Tracer. I did C4. While I was doing C4, soon thereafter, John came out with a product called Tracer. That was Dennis Yelly, but he was doing it as an independent contractor. I don't know what kind of a negotiated deal he got for payment.
Is that David or Dennis Yelling?
Dennis Yelly. Dennis. Yeah, I think that's what the name was.
Because at one point I confronted John with you having written it, and he said, no, there's no code there's none of Dave's code in the McAfee product.
None of my code in Tracer. My code was only C4, JFinder, VFinder, Mac1, Mac2, Mac3, Mac1.
But they had sold it for a couple of years, your product, before Tracer came out, or was it kind of?
I think it was 6 months after 3 to 6 months of C4 sales. Then John found Dennis Yelly. And okay. I had met Dennis once or twice. I never really got to know the guy at all. I don't know if he was a good coder. I don't even know what Tracer did. I don't know if it was signature based or I don't even know.
All right.
And that was pre McAfee Associates. This was still under the Interpath name. So I don't know any of the developers for McAfee Associates at all. No clue.
Okay.
Never met them. I do remember one, I think it was a marketing guy, Arya Gretzky. I think that's how you pronounce.
I didn't know.
I think it's an Israeli name, Arya Gretzky. Anyway, he was marketing or management or something. Really young guy, way younger than I was.
Okay, and you were pretty young at the time.
I was probably 20s, 30s.
Yeah.
20s, probably in my 20s.
Because let's see, 84. Since I was born in 50, it's always easy to figure out how old I am. So
20s, lower 30s.
Yeah. So what? Let's see, Actrix, 83. Yeah, I was 33 when I met you, and yeah, you were younger, kind of newly out of the military with your yeah. And one of the things that John had told me is that especially after he and Judy got the divorce, that he had given Judy half, and she deserved it. That Judy is the one that actually made the company work. She was basically the COO, and if it had been left to John, he just would have wandered off into other projects. He is, staying on track for more than a few weeks at a time was pretty much stretching John. But Judy was the one that started actually, collecting the money and making the company truly work. That's what John told me. What was your interaction with Judy?
I don't have any. I met her at the barbecue. She met our kids. We talked a little bit. I had no clue what her role was, or even if she had a role. No interaction as far as John paid me. I never knew that she had anything to do with the company. But that does make sense because
you knew John.
I knew John,
yeah. Right. For him to have made
his ideas. He's the idea man. He comes out with ideas. What you do with the ideas, that's not his job.
That's exactly right. So we've established here that the antivirus idea was John's.
The concept based on the Macintosh and the Macintosh virus hitting the news, that triggered a light bulb in his head.
And so he asked you, he described it to you, and so you're the one that put it together.
I just ran with the idea. Once the light bulb went off in my head, I needed no input. Just I know what to do.
Okay.
I know if a virus could exist, this is how it would exist. I knew exactly how the theoretical concept could
Right.
exist because we didn't have any viruses. So I wrote one, wrote the antivirus, checked it. Hey, it works.
Okay. Now,
Yeah, and John
to-
never gave me input, had no input whatsoever. He actually did ask for the source code, and I'd give him the source code. And I was a little bit afraid of somebody stealing the source code. So I put this signature into the code that if anybody stole it, this piece, the signature piece, which does nothing, it's useless, could be identified. And I can say, hey, you stole my code because these 27 bytes, whatever, I put it in there to identify my code if you ever stole it. And the comment in the source code said, do nothing that looks like something but really isn't, or is it? Question mark. And John was reading through it and he looked at the comment and he called me up and he starts laughing. He says, hey, what is this? And it's like, hey, somebody steals our code. We can now prove that they stole it from me because this has nothing to do with an antivirus, yet we could prove that it came from this source code. So.
Okay. All right. So he read your source code and he read the comments.
He read the comments and the source code. He didn't comment about, hey, do this or do that. As far as I knew, he didn't know programming. He was the idea man. He doesn't do the hard work. He doesn't get his fingers dirty.
Yeah. That was my I think he did earlier in his career. He programmed.
Did, yeah.
He programmed. It's like me. Most of my career, I never actually programmed much. It's like I would write one program and it would be some beautiful piece of code, and then I'd get a promotion and never write another piece of code.
Yeah, when I see comments in the news about McAfee, the original antivirus, it's like, yeah, no, John didn't get his hands dirty. No, he hired people to do that.
Yeah, so you don't believe that John ever laid any antivirus code?
I don't believe so.
I don't believe he did either. But he was very, very good at staffing.
Yeah.
And motivating his employees. I mean, look what he did with you.
Yeah,
okay.
I heard lots of stories about parties in John's office. And
on his desk, yeah.
On his desk, in the hallway, in the kitchen. I won't tell you what they did, but if it's on a desk, you can guess.
Yeah, so, and it's not just...
Oh, no. This is, what's the word? A two-person sport.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, and those were parties at his Cheney. It was everywhere. It was everywhere John worked. It was part of what made it fun working with John. So okay, well, Dave, it's been a couple of hours, an hour and a half at least. Is there anything else we want to cover for today?
I think this pretty much covers it. Yeah, we covered a lot of ground.
We did. I'd like to have some more short interviews with you to find out exactly how you came to be the super programmer that you were, and also talk about how my friendship with John developed from the 75. And I'm sure there's a lot of other information that the viewers and that are interested in John are interested in, and we can explain more about those desk parties, or at least I can. So all right then. Good talking with you, Dave.
Good talking with you again.
And I guess I'm going to stop the recording and we can talk about our next engagement.
I'll press
to the audience. I hope you enjoyed this. Bye.